The velvet curtain was 30 seconds from rising, and I was standing in the wings watching my family's reserved front row seats remain empty. My phone buzzed for the 100th time. Another photo from my sister Madison's 21st birthday party. This one showed Mom holding up a champagne flute, Dad's arm around Madison's shoulders, both of them beaming. The location tag read, "The Peninsula Hotel, Grand Ballroom." The timestamp, 7:32 p.m. My play had started at 7. I turned off my phone and felt something inside me crack, not break. I'd been breaking for years. This was different. This was the final, crystallizing moment when everything shattered into dust. 5 minutes to your entrance, Vera, the stage manager whispered. I nodded, adjusting the costume I'd sewn myself because Mom had accidentally donated my costume fund to Madison's party planner. Through the gap in the curtain, I could see those empty seats. Row A, seats 5 to 7. The premium tickets I'd bought with my own money I'd earned from tutoring jobs I worked at midnight after rehearsals, because my family said they'd try to make it, but couldn't commit to buying tickets themselves. The lights dimmed. The overture began. I stepped onto the stage for my debut as Juliet in the biggest production of my life, the performance that 3 Broadway scouts had come specifically to see. I delivered every line perfectly, hit every mark, poured 22 years of longing and heartbreak into Shakespeare's words. The empty seats glowed like an accusation under the stage lights. When I took my bows, the audience stood and roared. The director was crying. My castmates lifted me onto their shoulders. I smiled and waved and felt absolutely nothing, except the weight of those 3 empty seats crushing my chest. I made it to my dressing room before I collapsed. The heart attack took me quickly. 22 years old, and my body simply decided it had endured enough. The medics said it was a congenital defect no one had caught, a ticking time bomb in my chest. But I knew better. It was those empty seats. It was watching my family choose Madison's party over the most important night of my life, exactly as they'd chosen her cheerleading competitions over my piano recitals, her tennis matches over my debate championships, her Instagram-perfect life over my desperate, invisible existence. The last thing I heard was my phone buzzing, another photo notification from Madison's party. Then everything went dark, and then, impossibly, I woke up. I was 16 again. I knew this immediately because I was staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, the one with the water stain shaped like a butterfly that Mom had never bothered to fix because Vera's room isn't where guests go. My body felt wrong, younger, smaller, without the muscle I'd built from years of stage combat training. My phone was the old model I'd had in high school. I grabbed it with shaking hands. The date read, September 15th, 2019. 6 years before my death. 6 years before that opening night. I sat up slowly, my mind racing. This was impossible. This defied every law of physics and nature. And yet I remembered everything. The taste of my last breath, the crushing pressure in my chest, the cold of the hospital floor against my cheek. I remembered dying alone in a dressing room while my family clinked champagne glasses at my sister's party. A knock at my door made me jump. "Vera!" My mother's voice was sharp with impatience. "Madison needs you to drive her to Ashley's house. She's having a crisis about homecoming." In my first life, I'd dropped everything and driven her. I'd missed my rehearsal for the school play, lost my role because of the absence, and spent the evening listening to Madison complain about having to choose between 2 boys who both wanted to take her to the dance. "I have rehearsal," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. "Vera, don't be difficult. This is important." "So is my rehearsal." Silence, then, "Fine, be selfish. Don't come crying to me when Madison doesn't help you with your college applications." The door slammed. I lay back down, my heart pounding. Madison had never helped with my college applications. In fact, in my first life, she'd deleted my Common App essay the night before it was due, claiming it was an accident when she borrowed my laptop. I'd stayed up until 4 a.m. rewriting it from memory, submitted it late, and missed out on early admission to Juilliard. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Over the next few weeks, I began to understand the gift I'd been given. I had 6 years of memories that no one else possessed. I knew every betrayal before it happened, every manipulation, every lie. My family thought they were dealing with the same doormat Vera who would sacrifice everything for their approval. They had no idea they were facing someone who'd already lost everything once. I remembered that in November of my junior year, Dad would borrow the $5,000 I'd saved from my part-time job at the bookstore. He'd say it was for an emergency business expense and promise to pay me back with interest. He never would. That money was supposed to be for my summer intensive at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, the program that would have changed my life. On November 3rd, I withdrew all my money and opened a new account at a different bank. I didn't tell anyone. On November 5th, Dad came into my room with his concerned father face on. "Vera, honey, I need to talk to you about something important." "What is it?" I asked, not looking up from my homework. "I'm in a bit of a bind with the business. There's an investment opportunity that could really turn things around, but I need capital quickly. I was hoping I could borrow your savings temporarily." In my first life, I'd handed over my debit card immediately, desperate for his approval, desperate to be the good daughter. "I don't have any savings," I said now. He blinked. "What? You've been working at that bookstore for 2 years?" "Books are expensive, and I needed new shoes, a winter coat, school supplies. You know, the things you said you couldn't afford to buy me because Madison needed a new car." His face darkened. "Don't take that tone with me. Madison needed reliable transportation for her activities." "So did I. I just learned to take the bus." I watched him leave, his jaw tight with anger. The next day, Mom was cold to me at breakfast. Madison accidentally spilled orange juice on my homework. These were the tiny revenges my family dealt when I didn't fall in line. I didn't care anymore. I'd died once. Their silent treatment was nothing compared to that. The real change came in December, when I remembered the most important piece of my future, Grandma Chen. In my first life, my grandmother, my father's mother, had died when I was 20, and I discovered at the funeral that she'd left her entire estate to Madison. At least, that's what my parents had told me. I'd been heartbroken, feeling like even my grandmother had preferred my sister. I'd skipped the funeral, too devastated to face it. But in those final minutes before my heart attack, as I lay dying in my dressing room, I'd overheard two nurses talking. One of them had mentioned a news story about a woman who'd successfully sued her family for estate fraud. The details had been hazy, but something about it had pinged in my dying brain. Now, armed with foreknowledge and suspicion, I did something I'd never done before. I called Grandma Chen. "Vera, is that really you?" Her voice was warm with surprise. "I haven't heard from you in months." "I'm sorry, Grandma, I paused. In my first life, I would have said busy and let the distance continue, influenced by my parents' subtle suggestions that Grandma was difficult and judgmental. But that was a lie, wasn't it? "I've missed you. Can I come visit?" The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "I'd like that very much," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "How about this Sunday?" That Sunday, I took 3 buses to reach Grandma Chen's apartment in Chinatown. My parents didn't know I was going. I'd told them I was studying at the library. When Grandma opened the door, she pulled me into a hug that lasted a full minute. "You look thin," she said in Mandarin, pulling me inside. "And tired. Are they feeding you?" I'd forgotten how direct she was, how she saw through everything. "Sometimes," I answered honestly. Her eyes narrowed. "Sit, I'll make tea." Over jasmine tea and homemade dumplings, I told her everything. Not about the rebirth, that would sound insane, but about the years of neglect, the favoritism, the way every dollar and moment of attention went to Madison while I was expected to be grateful for scraps. Grandma Chen listened with a face like stone. When I finished, she said, "I suspected. Your mother stopped bringing you to visit years ago. Always excuses. You were busy, you were tired, you didn't want to come. But Madison came regularly." "I never knew you invited me." "Of course you didn't." She refilled my teacup. "Your parents have been trying to cut you off from me since you were 12. I think they were afraid I'd see how they treated you." "Why would they do that?" Grandma Chen looked at me with ancient eyes. "Because I'm not as poor as they told you I was." and because my will leaves everything to the grandchildren who maintain a relationship with me. My heart stopped. Everything? I own this building, Vera, and 3 others, plus investments, savings. I'm not wealthy by American standards, but by the standards of a woman who immigrated here with nothing, I'm comfortable. She reached across the table and took my hand. I've been wondering why you abandoned me. Now I know you didn't. They separated us deliberately. I started to cry then. Real tears, not the careful tears I'd learned to cry in my first life when I needed to perform emotion for my family's benefit. These were tears of relief, rage, and recognition. I want to know you, I whispered. I want to be in your life. Then you will be, Grandma Chen said firmly. Come every Sunday. I'll teach you Mandarin properly. Your parents let it lapse, I notice. I'll teach you to cook. We'll talk. And Vera, don't tell them you're coming here. Let them think what they want. I visited every Sunday after that. Grandma Chen became my anchor, the one person in my life who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. She taught me more than cooking and language. She taught me about power, about money, about the art of playing a long game. Your parents are fools, she said one Sunday as she showed me her investment portfolio. They could have had my support all these years. Instead, they pushed you away and courted Madison, thinking she was the smart bet. She smiled, sharp as a knife. They have no idea that Madison can't stand them either. She just plays the game better. What do you mean? I mean your sister is not as devoted to your parents as she pretends. I see her sometimes when she doesn't know I'm watching. She's calculating every interaction, every smile. She's using them the way they've used you. This was news to me. In my first life, I'd always assumed Madison genuinely loved our parents, that their tight family unit had no cracks. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to inherit everything when I die, Vera, and you need to understand what that means. You need to be ready. I stared at her. Everything? But what about Madison? Madison comes to visit me, but she doesn't see me. She sees an investment, a future inheritance. She brings her phone, takes photos for social media, visiting grandma, had family first, and spends the entire time checking notifications. You talk to me. You listen. You care. Grandma Chen's eyes glittered. Besides, Madison will be fine. She's already planning to marry rich. She told me so herself last month. She thought I'd be impressed by her ambition. When are you planning to die? I asked, then immediately felt horrified. I'm sorry, she laughed. I'm 78 and healthy as an ox. I'll probably outlive your parents. But when I do go, you'll be taken care of. Until then, I want to help you build your life. What do you need? I thought about the summer intensive, about Juilliard, about all the opportunities I'd lost the first time around because I didn't have money or support. I want to go to RADA next summer, I said. The Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. And I want to apply to Juilliard early admission. Then that's what we'll do. True to her word, Grandma Chen paid for the Iradia summer intensive. My parents didn't even notice I was gone. They were too busy planning Madison's 18th birthday party, which was going to be the event of the season. I spent July in London, training with world-class teachers, networking with students from around the globe, and feeling like I'd finally found my people. When I returned, bronzed and confident and better trained than anyone in my high school drama department, Madison looked at me with something like suspicion. Where did you get the money for that? She asked one night at dinner. Scholarships, I lied smoothly. And I worked extra shifts. Vera's always been resourceful, Mom said, in a tone that made resourceful sound like an insult. Though I wish you'd asked us first. We could have helped. No, you couldn't have, I thought. And I didn't need you to. Senior year was a dance of deception. I applied to Juilliard early decision, submitting my application with Grandma Chen's support and careful proofreading. I didn't breathe a word to my parents until the acceptance letter came in December. You got into Juilliard? Dad looked at the envelope like it might bite him. How are you planning to pay for it? Scholarships and financial aid, I said, and I've been saving. This was technically true. Grandma Chen had agreed to pay half. I'd earned the other half through a combination of my bookstore job, tutoring, and some careful stock investments Grandma had taught me to make. But Juilliard is in New York, Mom protested. That's so far away. In my first life, this was the moment I'd backed down. I'd been so desperate for their approval that I'd withdrawn my acceptance and gone to the local state university instead, commuting from home so I could be there for the family. I know, I said now. I'm excited. Madison's face was a storm cloud. What about us? What about family? What about me? I countered. When have you ever cared about what I wanted? That's not fair, Mom said sharply. We've always supported you. I could have listed every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment. They'd chosen Madison over me. Instead, I just smiled and said, then you'll be happy I got into my dream school. The tension in the house after that was thick enough to cut. My parents alternated between giving me the silent treatment and trying to guilt me into staying. Madison started a campaign on social media about family values and how people who abandon their families for fame are selfish. She didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew. I didn't care. I had Grandma Chen, I had my acceptance letter, and I had foreknowledge of every manipulation they'd try. In January, Dad tried the money trick again. Vera, I need to have a serious talk with you about finances. Okay. Juilliard is very expensive. Even with scholarships, there will be living expenses, travel, materials. Have you really thought about this? Yes. Because your mother and I have been discussing it, and we're not sure we can help you financially if you go so far away. Madison will be starting college next year, too, and with her medical condition. Madison doesn't have a medical condition, I interrupted. He blinked. Her anxiety disorder is self-diagnosed and conveniently appears whenever she wants something or needs to get out of something. I'd learned this in my first life, too late to do anything about it. Madison had used her anxiety to get extensions on assignments, skip family events she found boring, and guilt-trip our parents into buying her whatever she wanted as therapy. That's incredibly insensitive, Vera. Is it? Has she ever been formally diagnosed? Has she ever actually seen a therapist? The silence told me everything. I'll be fine, I said. I don't need your money. His face reddened. Then I hope you understand that if you reject this family's help, you can't expect to come crawling back when things get difficult. I understand perfectly. That spring, as I finished my senior year and prepared for graduation, I watched my family's dynamic with new eyes. I saw how they'd trained me from childhood to be their support system, the one who gave and never asked for anything in return. I saw how Madison had been trained to take, how my parents had created a perfect little narcissist who believed the world revolved around her. And I saw how fragile it all was. In May, Madison had her senior prom. It was, predictably, a massive production. Mom spent weeks helping her find the perfect dress, a custom designer gown that cost $3,000. Dad rented a limousine. The hair and makeup alone were $500. The night before prom, Madison came into my room. This was unusual. She generally avoided me now that I'd stopped being useful to her. I need a favor, she said without preamble. No. She blinked, thrown off balance. In my first life, I'd never said no to her. You don't even know what it is. I know I'm not doing it. Vera, don't be a bitch. I need you to take my shift at the frozen yogurt shop tomorrow. I can't miss prom for work, and they said if I don't show up, I'm fired. In my first life, I'd taken her shift. I'd missed my own scholarship interview for a performing arts grant because of it. Madison had never thanked me. The yogurt shop had fired her anyway 2 weeks later for repeated no-shows. No, I said again. Are you serious right now? This is my senior prom. It's once in a lifetime. Then you should have requested the day off properly, instead of just assuming you could skip. Mom, Madison shrieked, running from my room. Vera's being horrible. The fight that followed was spectacular. Mom called me selfish, ungrateful, jealous of my sister's happiness. Dad said I was deliberately sabotaging Madison's special night. Madison cried photogenic tears and said I'd always hated her. I sat through it calmly, thinking about my own prom, which I hadn't attended in my first life because I'd spent the night driving Madison and her friends around after the dance, since she'd been too drunk to drive and had called me for help instead of our parents, because she didn't want to get in trouble. I have a scholarship interview tomorrow, I said, when they'd exhausted their arguments. It's worth $50,000 over 4 years. Madison's shift at the yogurt shop pays minimum wage. Do the math. I got up and left the room. Madison went to prom. She also got fired from the yogurt shop. I went to my interview and won the scholarship. But the real turning point, the moment everything changed, came in September, just before I was supposed to leave for Juilliard. Madison's 21st birthday party was scheduled for September 15th, 5 years in the future. But in this timeline, her 18th birthday party was scheduled for September 3rd, and I was supposed to skip freshman orientation at Juilliard to attend. "It's just orientation," Mom said when I protested. "You can miss one day. This is your sister's 18th birthday. This is important." In my first life, I'd missed orientation. I'd arrived at Juilliard a day late, lost and confused, and spent months trying to catch up socially. I'd never quite fit in with my cohort because I'd missed those crucial first bonding moments. "I'm not missing orientation," I said. "Vera, this is non-negotiable," Dad said. We're having a family discussion about this right now." We were at dinner, a family meeting that had clearly been staged. Madison sat there with tears already streaming down her face. "You're choosing some stupid school thing over me," she sobbed, "on my birthday." "Orientation is not a school thing. It's mandatory. They've made it clear that missing it without a medical emergency is unacceptable." "So, get a medical emergency," Madison snapped, dropping the tears instantly. "Say you're sick." "No." "Vera," Mom's voice was dangerously quiet. "If you miss your sister's party, you are telling this family that we don't matter to you. Is that really what you want?" In my first life, I'd caved at this moment. The guilt had been too much. I'd missed orientation, attended the party, and spent the entire evening being ignored while Madison held court with her friends. But I'd lived this once before. I'd died once before. I knew exactly where this led. "Yes," I said clearly. "Vasa, that's exactly what I want because you don't matter to me, not anymore." The silence was absolute. "How dare you?" Dad started. "How dare I?" I stood up. "How dare you, all of you? Do you know how many times I've sacrificed what I wanted for this family? Do you know how many of my events you've missed? My 8th grade piano recital? All of you skipped it for Madison's soccer game. My high school graduation? Mom left early to help Madison move into her dorm for cheer camp. My acceptance to Juilliard, you tried to talk me out of going." "That's not fair," Madison said, but her voice was uncertain. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? I've been planning my life around you for 18 years. I'm done." I left the table, went to my room, and finished packing for New York. They didn't speak to me for the next 3 days. On the morning I was supposed to leave, I woke to find my acceptance letter to Juilliard torn into pieces on my bedroom floor. Madison's work, obviously. A last-ditch attempt at sabotage. Good thing I'd kept digital copies of everything. I took one suitcase and my laptop. I'd already shipped the rest of my belongings to my dorm. I called an Uber. I wasn't going to ask them to drive me to the airport. Grandma Chen met me at the door. I hadn't known she was coming. She stood in the foyer in her best coat, a small envelope in her hands. "I thought you might like company on your ride to the airport," she said in Mandarin. Behind her, I could see my parents and Madison on the stairs, shocked into silence by her presence. "I'd love that," I said. Grandma Chen turned to face my father. "I'm disappointed in you, Thomas. You've become exactly the kind of man your father was. Small, petty, cruel to those who can't fight back." "Mother, I'm not finished. I've watched you favor one daughter over the other for years. I said nothing because I thought perhaps you'd grow out of it, realize what you were doing, but you've only gotten worse." She looked at my mother. "And you, Jennifer. You've enabled this. You've turned these girls against each other, and wondered why one of them wants to escape. Mrs. Chen, I don't think you understand, Mom started. I understand perfectly. I also understand that my will is going to be a surprise to you when I die. She took my hand and we walked out together. In the Uber, she handed me the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. For expenses, she said, and emergencies and anything else you need. I started to cry. Don't cry. She patted my hand. You're free now. Go live your life. Call me every week. Come home for holidays. To my home, not theirs. And Vera, make me proud. I will. I kept my promise. I called her every Sunday. I visited for Thanksgiving and Christmas, spending the holidays in her warm apartment in Chinatown, learning to make dumplings and listening to stories about her immigration to America. I didn't go home to my parents' house. At first, they tried to reach out. Emails, texts, voicemails. All of them had the same theme. I was being selfish, immature, punishing them for no reason. Madison sent me long messages about how I'd ruined her birthday party by not being there, how embarrassing it was to explain to everyone that her sister had chosen school over her. I blocked them all. At Juilliard, I thrived. Without the weight of my family's expectations and manipulations, I discovered I was good at making friends, at collaborating, at being happy. I joined study groups and theater companies. I performed in showcases. I let myself be seen. In my sophomore year, I was cast as Juliet in the school's main stage production of Romeo and Juliet, the same role I'd been playing when I died in my first life. I could feel the echo of that other timeline, but this time was different. This time, I wasn't performing for absent family members. I was performing for myself, for my craft, for the art. 3 Broadway scouts came to see me. All 3 offered to represent me. After graduation, I was cast in a new production of Wicked as Elphaba, a dream role. The show was a hit. I was a hit. Critics called my performance transcendent, career-making, the best Elphaba in a generation. My parents saw the reviews. They saw my face in Playbill magazines and on Broadway.com. They saw me living the life I'd always dreamed of. And they started calling again. Vera, honey, we've been so worried about you, Mom's voicemail said. We've missed you so much. We saw your show. You were wonderful. We'd love to catch up. Maybe we could come to New York and see you perform. We could take you to dinner afterward. Celebrate your success. I deleted the voicemail. Dad's email was more direct. Vera, I know we've had our differences, but you're still our daughter. We're so proud of what you've accomplished. Your mother and I would like to see your show. Could you arrange tickets for us? I archived the email. Madison's Instagram DM was the most Madison thing I'd ever read. OMG, Vera. I can't believe you're on Broadway. I'm in NYC next month for a modeling thing. We should totally meet up. I'll bring Mom and Dad and we can see your show. Can you get us house seats? The good ones, lol. I blocked her. They wanted back in now that I was successful. Now that I had something they could brag about, something they could post on social media, something they could use to make themselves look good. But they'd missed their chance. They'd missed every chance. Years passed. I went from Wicked to a starring role in a new musical that transferred to Broadway. Then a limited revival of A Doll's House that earned me a Tony nomination. Then a film, an indie drama that premiered at Sundance and earned me an Oscar nomination. I lost the Oscar, but I didn't care. I'd already won the only thing that mattered, my freedom. Grandma Chen came to everything. She sat in the front row at my shows, beaming with pride. She was my date to award shows and opening night parties. She met my friends, my colleagues, my romantic partners. She was the family I'd chosen, and she was better than the family I'd been born into. When I was 28, 6 years older than I'd been when I died the first time, Grandma Chen died peacefully in her sleep. I was devastated. She'd been my anchor, my champion, my proof that I deserved to be loved. At her funeral, my parents and Madison showed up. We're so sorry for your loss, Mom said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. We know you two were close. We were, I said flatly. When is the will reading? Dad asked, cutting to the chase. Tomorrow. They exchanged glances. They'd clearly been planning for this moment. The next day, we gathered in the lawyer's office. My parents sat on one side of the table with Madison between them. I sat on the other side alone. The lawyer, Mr. Wang, who'd known Grandma Chen for 40 years, opened the will with a small smile. Mrs. Chen was very specific about her wishes, he said. Her entire estate, including 4 buildings in Manhattan's Chinatown, various investments, savings accounts, and personal property, is left to her granddaughter, Vera Chen Thomas. The silence was deafening. What? Madison's voice was shrill. That can't be right. What about me? You're mentioned, Mr. Wang said, flipping a page. Mrs. Chen left you a letter. He handed Madison an envelope. She ripped it open, her hands shaking. I watched her face as she read. I watched the confusion turn to shock, turn to rage. This is bullshit, Madison spat, throwing the letter on the table. I picked it up and read it. To Madison. You visited me often, but you never knew me. You saw an old woman with money, not a grandmother with stories. You came because you thought you would inherit, not because you loved me. I'm leaving you nothing because you never gave me anything worth having. Perhaps this will teach you that not everyone can be manipulated with a pretty smile and fake tears. Grandma Chen. This is your fault, Madison turned to me, her face ugly with rage. You poisoned her against me. You turned her against this family. I didn't have to, I said calmly. You did that all by yourself. Mrs. Chen was very clear in her wishes, Mr. Wang said. She was of sound mind when she made these decisions. The will is ironclad. We'll contest it, Dad said immediately. You're welcome to try. Mrs. Chen anticipated that. She left detailed documentation of her relationship with both granddaughters, including saved messages, recorded conversations, and diary entries spanning decades. Any contest will be expensive and public. My parents looked at each other. I could see them calculating, weighing the cost of a legal battle against the likelihood of winning. How much is the estate worth? Mom asked finally. Approximately $18 million. Madison made a sound like a wounded animal. You're really going to keep all of it? She demanded, turning to me. After everything we've been through? We're family, Vera. No, I said, we're not. Not anymore. I stood up. Mr. Wang, please proceed with the estate transfer. I won't be contesting anything. These people are strangers to me. I walked out of the office and didn't look back. The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings, property transfers, and financial planning. I learned how to manage real estate, how to handle investments, how to use wealth, not just for myself, but for good. I started a foundation for arts education, focusing on providing opportunities for talented kids who lacked family support. I called it the Grace Chen Foundation, after my grandmother. Meanwhile, my family fell apart. Madison's modeling career never took off. She aged out of the teen market and didn't have the height or the work ethic for high fashion. She tried to pivot to influencing, but her follower counts stagnated. Her posts became increasingly bitter, filled with vague allusions to toxic family members and people who forget where they came from. My parents' marriage crumbled. Without me as their scapegoat and Madison as their golden child to unite them, they turned on each other. Dad's business failed. It turned out he'd been cooking the books for years, and without Grandma Chen's money to bail him out, everything collapsed. Mom filed for divorce and moved in with Madison, the two of them enabling each other's victim narratives in a tiny apartment in New Jersey. I knew all of this because they kept trying to reach out, each message more desperate than the last. Vera, we made mistakes, but we're still your family. Please help us. Vera, your sister is struggling. She needs medical care she can't afford. Can you help? Vera, I'm about to lose the house. I'm begging you. Just a loan. I'll pay you back. I never responded. Some people might think I was cruel, but I remembered dying alone on a dressing room floor. I remembered watching them choose Madison's party over my opening night. I remembered 22 years of being invisible, disposable, useful only as a support system for the people who should have supported me. I owed them nothing. 5 years after Grandma Chen's death, I was 33 years old and at the height of my career. I'd just finished filming a major Netflix series where I played the lead, a complex, morally ambiguous character that critics were already calling Emmy-worthy. I was also engaged to a wonderful man named David, a playwright who'd written a beautiful piece specifically for me. We were planning a small wedding, intimate, meaningful, filled with the people who actually loved me. My parents were not invited. Neither was Madison. But they found out anyway, probably through social media or the entertainment press. The day before my wedding, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Vera, it was my mother's voice, and she sounded old, tired. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. I know you hate us. I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm calling because Madison is in the hospital. She tried to kill herself last night. My stomach dropped. What? Pills. They pumped her stomach. She's going to live, but... Mom's voice broke. She left a note. It was addressed to you. What did it say? It said, "I'm sorry I was never as good as you." The silence stretched between us. I felt a surge of complicated emotions. Pity, anger, grief for the sister I'd never really had. "I'm sorry that happened," I said finally, "but I can't help you. I'm not asking you to help. I'm asking you to... I don't know, understand? She spent her whole life being told she was perfect, and when that turned out to be a lie, she didn't know how to cope. We did that to her. We did that to both of you." "Yes," I said, "you did." For what it's worth, Vera, you were right. About everything. We were terrible parents. We favored Madison. We neglected you. We tried to manipulate you even after you'd escaped. And now we've lost everything. Our house, our marriage, our dignity, both of our daughters. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Madison's in the hospital, and you won't even talk to us. We're reaping exactly what we sowed. Good. I thought you might say that. I wanted you to know that I know. I know what we did. I know we can't fix it. And I'm not calling to ask you to forgive us or help us or anything else. I'm calling to tell you that you were the good one all along. We were just too stupid and selfish to see it. She hung up. I stood there holding my phone, my hands shaking. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant. This was the acknowledgement I'd craved for years. But mostly, I just felt tired. The next day, I got married. David was kind and brilliant and loved me for who I was. My friends filled the small venue with laughter and joy. We danced until midnight, and I didn't think about my family once. Almost. On my wedding night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Madison. "I saw the photos. You looked beautiful. Congratulations." That was all. No manipulation, no guilt trip, no request for money or attention. Just a simple acknowledgement. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "Thank you. I hope you get the help you need." I blocked the number after I sent it. I didn't need closure. I didn't need their approval or their apology or their presence in my life. I'd built something beautiful out of the ashes of my first life, and I wasn't going to let them touch it. Years continued to pass. I won my Emmy, then I won my Tony, then I finally won my Oscar for a devastating performance in a film about family trauma. Deeply ironic, everyone said, not knowing just how much. At every awards show, I thanked David, my friends, my colleagues, and my late grandmother, who taught me what love actually looks like. I never mentioned my parents or Madison. Sometimes I'd see updates about them through the grapevine, industry gossip, mutual acquaintances, the occasional Google search I'd do in moments of weakness. Madison had gotten married to someone rich, which seemed to make her happy for a while. But then divorced when it turned out she'd married him primarily for money, and he'd caught on. My parents had remarried each other in what seemed like an act of desperation, two people with no one else clinging to the familiar dysfunction. They were all still alive, still struggling, still trapped in the patterns that had destroyed our family in the first place. And I was free. On the night of my 38th birthday, 16 years after my rebirth, 16 years of living a better second life, I sat in the front row of a Broadway theater watching a new production of Romeo and Juliet. I was there as a producer. I'd helped fund the production through my foundation. The actress playing Juliet was a scholarship recipient, a talented girl from a difficult family who reminded me of myself at that age. She was brilliant, pouring her heart into every line. I watched her take her bows to thunderous applause, and I remembered the last time I'd played Juliet. I remembered dying in my dressing room, heartbroken and alone. I remembered waking up 16, given an impossible second chance. And I realized something. I'd spent so much time planning my revenge, orchestrating my escape, ensuring that my family never got another chance to hurt me. But at some point, it had stopped being about revenge and started being about building something real. The empty seats in my first life had killed me, but they'd also set me free. After the show, I went backstage to congratulate the young actress. Her eyes were shining with adrenaline and joy. "Thank you so much for this opportunity," she said. "My family didn't even come tonight. They said it wasn't important. But it doesn't matter because I'm here and I did it," and she stopped, embarrassed. "Sorry, I'm rambling." "Don't apologize," I said gently, and for what it's worth. Their absence says everything about them and nothing about you. You were magnificent tonight." She started to cry then, and I hugged her, this girl who was so much like I'd been. "It gets better," I promised her. "You're going to build a life so beautiful that their absence becomes irrelevant. Trust me." I meant it, because I was living proof. That night, I went home to David and our apartment in Manhattan, bought with my own money, filled with art and books and the accumulated evidence of a life well lived. I looked at my Oscar on the shelf, my Emmy, my Tony. I looked at the photos of Grandma Chen scattered throughout the apartment, her face beaming with pride in every shot. And I thought about the empty seats. In my first life, those seats had destroyed me. In this life, they'd saved me, because they'd shown me, clearly, finally, undeniably, that my family would never choose me. And that realization had set me free to choose myself. My parents and Madison would never sit in the front row of my life again. They'd had their chance and they'd thrown it away. They'd chosen a birthday party over a play, popularity over potential, a golden child over a daughter who just wanted to be seen. And now they were living with the consequences while I lived in the light. I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it in a silent toast to my grandmother, to my younger self, to every version of me that had fought to get here. They chose her birthday party over my play, I whispered to the empty apartment. And after Rebirth, they never got front row seats again. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was just the truth. And the truth had set me free.